Today, we really do have a groovy podcast with two very special aficionados here to discuss something that a lot of us who love music consider or are considering quality vinyl and vintage electronic sounds versus today's digital and streaming sounds and their effects on the senses. Welcome, my childhood buddies, Scott and Mike. Hey, man, super excited to discuss this resurgence. Welcome, guys.
Thanks,
Hey,
Bill.
Will.
All right, guys. Hey, listen, we sat around discussing this topic a lot. The difference is that you guys are actually practicing this sound art with various experimentations of vinyl, kind of mixing, right, the high quality electronics of yesterday with vinyl. And listen, folks, Scott and Mike will enlighten us with their expertise via, we'll have kind of a point counterpoint crosstalk format. And Scott and Mike will also give their top 10 albums and the right vintage gear setup picks so you can get some value with this. So, Mike, let's lead off with you. Mike, we've all been hearing about this resurgence of vinyl going on. So what's up with that?
Yeah, Will, good question. So you kind of hear about it, you see it going on in the streets, you see more record stores popping up locally. And it is true, like, you go back to the 60s and the 70s and it was all vinyl, pretty much people, that was the main, source. There was like cassettes and things like that, but vinyl was like the mainstream. And then in the 80s, you had the kind of the surge of the CD, and that basically vinyl just fell off the map in the 80s. And then in the 90s, you got the MP3s,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of 2000s, we got into streaming. So obviously streaming is still the big thing. But what we're seeing now is for the
Yeah.
first time in probably 20, 30 years is vinyl has now become the number two kind of source of media, and it's overtaken CDs again and all other. It's now the number one physical.
Why do you think that?
Music.
What's going on with that? Why?
Personally, I just like the interaction, the physical interaction with holding an album, putting it on the turntable, listening to it. It's okay if it has a little bit of crackle and pop. For me, it's just more kind of natural sounding and real.
Now.
Yeah, so I think part of the thing that I love about records is that it's that physical interaction with the album. You take the album out of the cover, you look at it, you put it on the record player, you get to read through the actual album cover. You can see the lyrics. There's like a lyric sheet.
Cool.
You could see who produced it, who made it, where it was made. Like Scott and I are like, we're always like checking out, hey, this thing was made in Caribou out by him in Colorado, which I think is pretty cool. Or
It is cool,
this
man.
thing, this thing was made in California, in
Yeah.
that plant, in the record plant in Sausalito, and we just drove by there. So I think that's always cool. You don't get that from, like, obviously streaming. You don't see that who's on the record. There might have been like Michael McDonald was on this record, and like
And
you
he's
kind
got
of know.
such a long way to go. That's right. So,
That's right.
Good one.
yeah, and let's talk about the sound comparison of vinyls versus CD streaming, and that kind of Scott, that bleeds over into the electronics portion of this as well. So, Mike, I want you to lead that one off. What is?
Sure.
Give us a flavor of it.
Sure. There's going to be like people on far ends of the spectrum. I think Scott and I are probably a little bit more in the middle, but some people will say, oh, you got to do vinyl. It's the original analog source. Sounds better. It sounds richer and warmer. And that's part of the truth. And some people will definitely buy into that. I personally like the vinyl sound and the warm sound. CDs can sound great though too. They're clean, they're pure. They in general don't skip or get dirty. So there is something to that too. And then obviously the streaming sounds good, but there is like
Mhm.
there's a lossless rate to it.
What does that mean, lossless rate?
It has to do with like the compression of actually Scott's probably better at that one. He's more the technical.
Fire
No,
in,
actually,
Scott.
I don't know. I think Mike's right on.
That sounds right, Mike. Keep going, man. That sounds good.
So I mean, when they take it off the original and then they have to compress it into like an MP3 or whatever source, it's not quite the full range of sound. So
Okay.
I wanted to interject too, Bill. A lot of times people don't realize that when you buy a new vinyl album, a lot of times they're not using the original master tapes, which you
Ooh.
want. They're basically making a vinyl album from the digital recording. So basically you're listening to a CD on a vinyl format.
CD and a vinyl. Oh
yeah,
my
basically.
God.
So you really want to look for, if you're buying, Pink Floyd, Animals, or whatever, you want to make sure you're getting, mastered from the original tapes or something like that.
That's really good advice. So, I mean, I mean, are you guys saying, hey, well, let's go to a record store and start looking for some of these original albums? Is that kind of rather
Well, if
than
they're
buy a new
original,
one?
they're probably fine. It's just the ones that are like, you buy at Walmart that are the new,
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac.
The reissues.
New. Yes, exactly. Reissue.
And that's kind of just a CD with a vinyl sound, which kind of ruins what you're looking
it's
for
kinda
in
like,
a
yeah.
way.
Yeah, they can be made at a cheaper plant. You'll see a lot of stuff in like Eastern Europe now.
Mhm.
They're producing a lot of stuff, and some of it's good quality and some of it's not. So it does, you really want to know like which plant was it made at, because that makes a difference too.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds really good. And let's go to Scott. Obviously there's more to come from Mike, but Scott is going to talk a little bit about vintage, right, versus modern gear. And Scott, a lot of us, right, we're sitting around the campfire, somebody fires out the Amazon speaker, this little round device that shoots waves all over the place, and yeah, it sounds pretty good, but I mean, what's the difference between that and like Harman Kardon or from the Nay blasts from the past?
Right. I think a lot of it's convenience. The young people, they can run their own business with an iPhone working from home. And I think maybe their parents didn't have an old stereo or something, so they really can't compare, but they're totally fine, using the streaming, the Spotify, with a little JBL speaker or something like that. But I think if they had the opportunity to listen to a really good system, like, Mike and I have, not to, blow our own horns. We don't have like expert equipment, but it sounds really, really good. And I think if they had that opportunity to listen to something, whether it's new or old, but, hi-fi, I think they changed their mind. Yeah. And,
I think
enjoyed it.
we were talking about like appreciation notes, right, Scott? And I think one thing that really stuck out to me is the, like Mike talks about, like on vinyl records, how you can touch and feel it. Same thing with vintage equipment. I mean, you've got like sexy knobs and needles and flashing lights that go with the music. So tell us a little bit about that and like what's a good, what's one of the systems that you have at your house that you use that
I
gives
have
us
multiple.
that sound? Multiple.
I don't have as many as Mike probably, but yeah. So I think when I started to get hooked on this, it was during COVID, and I think a lot of people had time to be at home, and they had maybe some money they wanted to spend, and they wanted a hobby. So I just started going on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and buying old receivers, buying and selling.
Yeah.
And so I have a few left that I enjoy that I'll keep. But you're right, it's the whole tactile feeling. You're looking at meters, you're turning the lights off, you've got blue meters and red meters.
What do they do? What's a blue meter and a red meter?
No, I'm just saying like different.
Oh, just for the effects, right?
Colors.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Whereas the new stuff, if you look at a lot of the new stuff, it's basically just an amplifier with maybe one light, and everything's a remote control. With the old system, you're feeling these great old, Pioneers or Sansuis, and you're tuning them, and the flywheel feels smooth, and it just kind of brings back, yesteryear, back in the day, 1977, when you bought your first receiver. And it's just, to me, it's just a lot more fun.
And those speakers can still crank, it's just, what is that? Like, it's like you're drinking wine, right? You're looking for the notes, no pun intended, between the speakers of yesteryear, like, on each sides of your walls, right, in your bedroom, versus the onesie speaker that can toss it around the room. What's the subtle difference on that people can enjoy?
Yeah, it's the whole sound is enveloping. If you set the speakers up right, you kind of have to fool around with it. And I talked about using the triangle effect, which is kind of like, if your speakers are 8 feet apart, your chair should be 8 feet in front of the speaker, so
really
it builds
good.
like a little triangle.
Yeah,
And it just, sometimes I set mine up and it's almost like you're wearing headphones, like the sound
that's
is just
choice.
everywhere. It's perfect. So that's the advantage.
Hey,
of
folks, you learned
versus a
something
little
new.
speaker.
You know,
Yeah.
the Scott triangle effect.
Triangle
Yeah.
method. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Scott,
think you
do you
should
find-
coin that.
I had a question for Scott. Do you find that if you're sitting like in that triangle, is it like ideal that kind of the mids are kind of ear level or the speakers are kind of ear level?
That's what they say. Like, I think what tweeters are higher frequency, so they're more directional, so they don't fade out as fast. But bass, the frequencies go down really
Sure,
fast.
makes
So a lot
sense,
of
yeah.
people flip the speakers around if they're high, and they'll
Ah.
put the bass driver
Bass in.
up top. Yeah.
Only
Oh,
here
yeah.
can you hear that advice, folks. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Hey, Mike, that's a good segue into your realm, right? You know, talking about the experience, the listening experience and the record experience. So Scott
Sure.
just expounded on, you know, the triangle effect, where to stick the speakers and
Yeah.
where to sit. But what about the experience? What about popping that vinyl record on and what's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah. So it depends on kind of the music, like jazz, I kind of like to put the lights down, have a nice cocktail. You get in the mood. You kind of sit in your nice, comfortable chair, back, maybe you read
Beanbag?
Yeah, I want to get an Ames chair someday, but that's down the road. But
Yeah.
you just kind of you relax. You listen to the music. You're kind of absorbed by the music, and then you could either read a magazine, read a book about music. I mean, unfortunately,
Yeah.
half the time I'm doing that. But with the records, the only tricky part is every 20 minutes, 15 minutes, you got to flip the album. So it is a little bit more interactive, time consuming. I also recommend when you are doing it,
Yeah.
remember the old school. I don't know for any people out there that are like our age in the 50s, or probably even older, 60s and 70s. They remember these
What is that?
dishwashers.
Oh, those are
The
the
di-
best. They're
It's
still
a
the best.
brush.
Hey,
It's a wood-
describe it. What is it
it's a-
exactly now?
It's called a disc washer. It's a wood brush.
Mhm.
So like a wooden material, and then it's a brush where you just kind of rest it on the record and rock it back and forth. It's got a little built-in cleaner in it.
Oh, it's got
Everybody-
cleaner in it.
Everybody in the 70s had these.
You
Probably
clean their
60s.
records. Can you
Yeah.
buy it new today?
They still make them. This was actually a hand-me-down from my brother, which is
The new
pretty
ones
cool.
are, the new ones are kind of garbage.
A lot of them are plasticky or plastic looking.
Real,
There's
but they
also-
do sell them though, right?
Yeah, I think you can get
Okay.
them. You can actually get like original ones on eBay, but they
Yeah.
they like
Well,
jack up the price.
Yeah, what you guys are talking about is I can see like a lot of people of all
Nostalgia.
ages would want to do this. Just put together like a sound experience, that would be, transcendent, generationally transcendent. So that really sounds good. So Mike, I know you guys can give your picks. What we're talking about, Mike, what's your I know you got 10. For right now, though,
I mean,
know
I
you
got-
get to see
yeah.
them all, but give me your top 3 right now. You're sitting back. Somebody's
Sure.
listening to this goes, guys, this sounds great. I've never done this before. I used to have a cool stereo when I was a kid,
Yeah.
or I'm young now and I want to hear this sound. How do what's a good
Sure.
album to just
Sure, for
to start
for
off
pure-
with, man?
for pure sound, I mean, I'm going to be
Yeah.
kind of stereotypical, but Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
For
Can't
those
go
of you who
wrong.
aren't looking at the video, Mike's holding
yeah.
up this beautiful album
Can't-
with a light going through a prism, and reflected in the different colors.
It's-
So
yeah, you
beautiful
can't go-
album.
Can't go wrong. It's an iconic album. It's number 4 album sold in the history of
Well, it's got to
record.
be some awesome stereo sounds on that, though.
Yeah, pretty mind-blowing sounds. It's like when you hear time and the bells or the clocks, going off. It's one of those things that's good to turn it up a little
For
bit.
headphones only.
Yeah, or I'd say Pink Floyd is definitely a headphones. album.
Headphones. Okay,
They're- you're gonna put on those big old headphones.
so you got
and you get the night to
Pop 'em
yourself,
in.
and it's really
Yeah.
great.
Well, I got a question for you. Could I use like normal or modern headsets? Can I
You-
put it in the
you-
jacks? Are they compatible?
Yeah,
Scott, this
usually-
is for you, right?
Yeah, you have
Compatible?
to get an adapter. You could
I
do
would
it,
have to
but
get
you'd
an
have to get
adapter.
it. Yeah, because a lot of I forgot what the millimeter reading is, but you'd have to get like the bigger adapter. The
It's
They're
smaller
like a
not-
large.
fatter,
they're
it's a
not gonna-
fatter adapter that pops in.
Okay, and they're not terribly expensive, I'm guessing, right?
No.
Or, no,
No.
it's not going to bankrupt
Cheap.
your
No.
budget to set this up. All right, that's number 1. So what do we got number 2?
So I kind of go with like just classic stuff. This is again, if you're a child of the 70s or grew up in the 70s and you don't know what Fleetwood Mac Rumors is, I don't know what
I
planet
think
you were
everybody would.
on.
You don't have to. Well, yeah, but I think anybody would enjoy that. These are really classic
Fleetwood Mac
albums.
Rumors, that just got
Yeah.
a lot of airplay in the 70s. I think some people got kind of burnt out on it because they heard it so much, but it still sounds really good today. Like Scott actually gave me the advice on one of the songs on the album, Never Going Back Again. It's like an amazing song just to like audition your stereos and to listen to your
It's the oldest
speakers.
trick in the book if you're selling stuff.
It sounds exceptionally good, and it's like I always get people blown away with like how good a stereo sounds when you put that song on. So
I think that's what
and
is that ballad rock too? It kind of tells a story
Yeah,
of what was
yeah,
happening with the band. Kind of, is that true?
yeah.
Yeah.
So they were going through major like relationship, breakups and makeups, and they were kind of all dating each other. And if you watch the Amazon Prime show called was it
Daisy and the
Da-
Six.
Daisy Jones and the Six?
Okay.
They can thank Fleetwood Mac because it's basically loosely based on them. And
Oh,
actually,
okay.
even Stevie Nicks just recently said she's watched it twice now, and she's like, it's like watching a ghost. It's like she said she can't believe how much it really was like their lives. A lot of drugs and bad relationships, but it
Makes
created
good
great it
music, man.
created
Good
great music.
sounds. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear. Scott, what about give us a now, like you said, that you can go with this a lot of ways, but if I'm listening to you and I just want to get started with something, right? I want to put together a stereo speakers, basic setup. I mean, what am I going to do? Turntable and
Yeah,
speakers.
so there's so many great companies now. Mike and I like a company called Crutchfield. They're based in North Carolina, I believe.
Okay.
Because you can return everything within 60 days. So you can buy a set
Oh,
of speakers, and if you don't like them, you bring them back
yeah.
and they pay shipping. It's amazing. So yeah, so there's several big companies where you can pretty much put together an excellent system for like $1,200. And like for amplifiers, the company NAD, Denon, Yamaha, those are all great. You can find, integrated amplifiers for under $400. For
By the way, folks,
turntables, yeah,
this will be in the show notes too, so you don't have to take notes right now. But
right.
what if I don't 1,200 for a starter set? Can't we go anything a little bit less than that?
Oh yeah,
Just
sure.
to start
Yeah,
out
it
like maybe
just
600 sounds good.
no, you definitely. And if you go to like Amazon on Prime Days or something, you can
Mhm.
get some really good Polk audio speakers for literally $90. Sony makes a really good pair of bookshelf speakers that could be $90. You get a CD player for 200. Oh, you could easily do
But
something
what
like
about
that. It's not
getting
going to be great,
or
but
if you want to go back though and actually hear that sound though, what about where would one look for actual vintage speakers and a turntable? Where would one look for that? What's a good site?
yeah, Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. If
Facebook
you
Marketplace.
sometimes
Okay.
you have to deal with a little bit eccentric people that may or may not show up or cancel appointments, but a lot of people like Mike and I, we just like to try different things. So we
Yeah.
buy them and then it sits in a box and these people sell it, or maybe their parents passed away, estate
Yes.
sales, but you can get excellent equipment for, a third of what you would pay
Yes.
new. And it's usually all great stuff. Most people will let you audition it if they're selling it. They'll have it set up in their garage. When I
Oh,
sell
wow. There
something,
you go.
I have
Yeah.
everything set
Set
up
it
in the
up.
garage. They can come in. You can tell if people are trustworthy or not. You're not
Yeah,
worried about
your
them coming.
senses are spidey
Exactly.
senses are pretty good, and that
Yeah.
sounds like a great deal. I mean, I didn't know that, so if I wanted to do this, I would just go to Craigslist or Facebook Market and have it set up so I could hear it, and that sounds great. I mean,
Yep. Yeah, you can get some wonderful deals rather than buying brand new, because especially the new stuff depreciates immediately. So
Yeah, and on Facebook Marketplace, you can put in the filter like, hey, I'm looking for Klipsch speakers or a Marantz stereo or receiver, and it'll find it in your area. So, and what Scott and I find is, well, first of all, you get obsessed like looking every day for that steel deal, because there's going to be probably 80-90% of this stuff they're selling at prices close to eBay prices, which are expensive. But you'll see
okay,
some people that don't know how to price right, and they'll sell like $1,000 receiver for $150 because they don't know. Those things
Or
get
some people
they
that
get
just want
gobbled
to
up
get
right
rid of
away.
their
Yeah,
parents' stereo equipment, right? Kind of just
true.
move what they consider junk out of the house.
Yeah,
But you could pick it up. I imagine you could probably find some places like that too.
sure.
I've actually felt bad for people before because they have something so underpriced,
Yeah.
and I'll send them a message saying, "Your $300 speakers, did you realize that you can get 1,500 for these?" And you'll immediately get a message back, "Thanks so much. I had no idea." So it's like I like to help people like that. It's rather than them getting ripped off by someone that's just going to flip it. They're going to buy those clip speakers for 300 and they're going to flip it for 15. I'd rather have the actual owner get 1,500 for it.
That sounds really good. Mike, I know a lot of people would be interested, at least going first step is probably going to the record store, as Elvis say, the record store. But yeah, going there and just feeling around, right? I know there's we can't make it local, where we live. So how does one find a good vinyl shop in their area? I'm just like everybody else, kind of Google it or what to look for. What's the good signs for a good shop?
Yeah, it's a little bit of, trial and error. So I mean, part of it's just Googling, part of it's going there. You're gonna know right away whether it's good or not. A lot of the newer stores, they do tend to be a little bit more pricey. They'll make it's almost like if I walk in and it looks too fancy and nice, probably not for me, because it's like those guys are appealing to the people who want to buy new stuff and they're going to pay $50 for an album.
Right.
I'm looking for nice used stuff, with a guy with an eclectic collection of, punk and jazz and a little bit of everything, new wave and 70s and 80s and anything and everything. So yeah, I've gotten lucky where I just kind of go around a lot of places, and then the places I like, I buy a lot of stuff so they get to know me, and then they usually give me a deal. And if you buy so much money, they'll throw in a free album, or they'll give you like 10% off or something. And
When's record store day, Mike?
every day for me, any day I go out. But yeah, that's our running joke, because there's like, I think, what is it, twice a year, 4 times a year, there's record store days where they're trying to promote, buy local, get local. And then they also will release like special releases where it's maybe only 10,000 of these albums cut, or
that's really cool.
It's made on a colored disc or something like that, extra special.
I remember those. Yeah.
So they have these
back.
record store days, but Scott and I kid around because I do tend to go to record stores a lot, and so he says every day is record store day for me.
Mike's lucky where he lives, in a larger city. His choices are much greater than what I have, so he's able to get, and the prices too, in a large
prices too
area
as well. Yeah, in a larger city.
And he sends me things on Facebook or whatever, and the prices are way cheaper where he lives, just because it's supply and demand. There's just much more.
And the cool thing about a local shop, and if you get to know the owner, you can just say like, "Hey, I'm looking for this, first press of, Dark Side of the Moon, or first press of something really obscure." And if they come across it, they'll hold it for you, and I've had that happen.
That's really cool.
Times. And so you get to, you almost get to be like friends with the owners, and you've got a lot of shared interests in music and things like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, everybody shouldn't have a problem finding it, right? You go on Facebook, Meetup. I mean, you'll see user groups online. I mean, it shouldn't be a problem.
In Chicago, there's even like every 2 months now, there's like a record collector show in Countryside, Route 66,
Route 66,
Juliet Road. So anyway, they've got hundreds of vendors there. If you can't find stuff there, that place is dangerous, because you can come out of there with the 20 records or more.
Mike, we need a couple more picks for you, because listen, if you're just starting out, you want the good stereo sound, excellent groups, something that really sounds good on vinyl. You've given us 3. Give us a couple more, because I see some cool picks on your list here. Fire them off, kid.
So Steely Dan Age, I'm kind of sticking with, again.
No Static at all.
these are good ones.
Good call.
These are tried and true. So like this album was from 1977. It won the Grammy for Best Engineered Album, which doesn't surprise probably me or Scott, because like these guys, Steely Dan, every one of their albums just sounds like so good. It's like they were kind of known as like a studio band for a while. They didn't
Yeah.
tour in the 70s and 80s, but it's not true because I've actually seen them live and they're good musicians. And I mean, the sound, it's another one of those things. If you're like trying to sell like stereo equipment and you got somebody coming to your house, you pop
Yeah,
on,
pop that on.
you
All right,
pop
that's
that
good
on, and
advice.
they're going to be like walking out the door, can't wait to get it home, get that stereo home because it just sounds so good.
Yeah, I think to bring back the vinyl sound, one of your picks is Frank Sinatra. That really sounds good. What do you got?
Yeah.
What album do you recommend out of his many?
So this is
Look at that
really,
picture. That is gorgeous
is
art.
Really,
Sorry,
really
folks, if you
old
have audio
school.
only, but
Yeah.
it's beautiful, man. Yeah.
So this is a 1955 mono original. This is actually, I'm pretty proud to say I bought it for a decent price like a couple of years ago. Like Scott said, I started really getting into vinyl during COVID. This thing's probably like tripled in price since I bought it.
Yeah,
Like,
that's an amazing shape. It looks like a reproduction.
so
it's
it's a
gorgeous.
1955 mono. It's what I think is cool about it. It doesn't have like all the famous songs on it, but it's what is out there in the record world is it's the first concept album ever made. Like, so
What does that mean, concept album?
like it's got a theme, like Pink Floyd The Wall, or
A
something
ballad,
like
yeah,
that.
kind of a
Like,
yeah.
well, it's just a whole story. It's all the
Yes.
songs in it are a story. And so this one, literally in the wee small hours, you see the guy standing out in the street with a cigar.
It's
cigarette.
Frank Sinatra with a beautiful painting of him on there's a lamppost in like
Dark
grayed out New
street.
York buildings
Yeah.
behind him. It's gorgeous. He's wearing a suit, a hat, and a tie, and probably a cigarette dangling somewhere.
Yeah, so
But-
it sounds amazing that it's like from 1955, and it just sounds, if you turn the lights out, it sounds like Frank singing in your apartment or your living room or whatever.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
it's just like different songs about, it's kind of like, bad breakups and stuff at night, or relationships, and I think it's kind of like a roller coaster ride.
What
where
were
he's-
the drinks that Frank liked? Like Stingers or a
Yeah.
Giblet, or what else would
Giblet.
he have? Like a Manhattan? Scott, fire out a couple. What else would he
Vodka
have?
gimlets, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Just the
Yeah,
old
so-
school. They had these little glasses, just no chasers, no water, just pure booze.
Yep.
That's Frank. Scott, do you have any albums? Give me two that you love to play, the sound coming through on your sound system at home.
Boy, I like segue off of Steely Dan. Mike gave me a duplicate that he had, and it's Donald Fagen Nightfly, because he was part of Steely Dan, and it
It's a good
just
one.
it's produced so well. Those guys were just perfectionists, so everything they record is perfect. And then, believe it or not, it's a live album. I usually don't like live albums, but I love Frampton Comes Alive, and it's one of the
Yeesh.
top-selling albums. I could
Gotta
probably
be.
play that once a week and still enjoy it.
It's good.
So.
Anything to listen to in altered states, or you guys recommend, or?
I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, we can't. Actually, we
Pink
don't.
Floyd
Hey, just
metal.
booze. Booze is good enough. Listening to
Oh,
Frank.
I thought you were going to ask about shrooms or something. No, I don't do that. I don't do that stuff.
Yeah,
No. I think it all
No.
just sounds good if you have, a couple glasses of wine and,
Sure.
put
That
on a
sounds
great
good.
album and turn the lights off. Doesn't matter what you're playing. It sounds great.
Scott, what old we're gonna wrap this up soon, guys. So Scott, what older system you recommend? Because just in my mind, I just remember from the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, right? Harman Kardon, Pioneer, Fisher, among others. I mean, if you find an old one online, any faves of yours?
Yeah, I'd say Marantz, Sansui, Pioneer. Those are probably the big three. Yamaha made some great stuff.
Yamaha, that's right. Yeah. Okay, that sounded to be really good. And you could probably find a deal on those somewhere, if you
the
look.
prices are going down. During COVID, I bought stuff at a premium, and now the stuff is not very expensive.
So you're breaking the rule. You bought high and you got to sell
exactly.
low. But you want
so
to
I kept a lot of it, and I'll wait.
Yeah.
It goes
Sit
up
on
and
it.
down like the
Hey,
stock
sit
market.
on it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott got a Techniques one time for like $10 at like a secondhand store, right?
Yeah,
I've never
and
heard
it
of
sounded
Techniques.
wonderful. Yeah, it sounded wonderful. A lot
bad.
of people dog them because they were made by Panasonic, but I thought it sounded one of the best I've ever. It was only 20 watts per channel. It sounded wonderful. But yeah, I think I flipped it for 150. I bought it for like 10 and flipped it. So
A good flip. Yeah.
yeah, it was
It'll
a good
pay
flip.
for
but-
a couple dinners here and there.
yeah,
That's nice.
exactly. A couple
Or
bottles.
couple
of wine, yeah.
bottles to go with Frank. That sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
All right, guys. So we're wrapping up here. So Mike, again, so everybody can. You're down, you're down in your man cave. I see that you got a setup. You've got some beautiful old stereos there. You probably got some new ones as well. What's the difference? What can one expect? I mean, you gave us a description, but do it again one more time. Tell people what's the difference between the grooves and digital.
For vinyl or for just the playing on the stereos?
Yes, everything vinyl and on
Yeah.
the old stereos with a good
Yeah.
needle though, right? A good turntable, a good needle. The nice,
Yeah.
cool, like the beautiful wooden speakers I see behind you. What's the difference between that and streaming something on your
Sure.
headsets, right?
Sure. I think you're going to get a little bit of that pop and hiss, sound from an older record.
Yeah.
But if you can overlook that, I think you get this incredible, richness, and it's just it's almost like a 3D effect in the room. And I find that just very, soothing and calming and
There's
everything
more
like that.
texture. It's coming
Yeah.
out towards you. You can
Versus
almost
the-
touch it a little bit more.
Versus
Yeah.
the CD just being a little sterile. It sounds good. Some people will
Sterile's a
call it
good word for it.
Some
Yeah.
people will call it bright, because it's too clean or whatever. But look, everybody's got their own preference of what they like. I would probably gravitate slightly towards vinyl.
Yeah. Okay. And Scott, so tell us a little bit about how to set up. You told us, what equipment's out there, what you can look for, a couple brands, right? And we coined a word. So how do you position the speakers and where should you
the
sit for good
the
sound?
triangle method. That's just a general rule, but you have to
Yeah.
experiment. So yeah, if your speakers are 10 feet apart in a large room, then put your chair 10 feet in front of the speakers.
And if it's a smaller room, if it's 7 feet
Yeah,
apart, then
accordingly.
7 feet. But
But there's a lot of variables in there, and you want to make sure you have some sort of room treatments in there. You want curtains, drapes.
you
wall
want a little
hanging,
sound
carpet.
absorption. Yeah.
Right, because I have a room, unfortunately, it's all tile floor, and at times it can be a little fatiguing with the sound because it's just kind of harsh. So it's always best to have like a carpeted floor. Like Mike's basement is probably really good because he's got carpeting, and you want to kind of shoot for that.
You want to keep the speakers off the wall a little bit too, don't you, Scott? Because if it's too close to the wall, I think the bass can be kind of booming.
Depending on what they are, yeah. If there's a port, like a bass port in the back, you want to keep those like, I don't know, 1 or 2 feet away from the wall. Otherwise it gets too boomy, they call it. But if the port's in the front, and a port is just like a little circle that creates additional bass, the air comes out, whatever. If it's a front ported speaker, you can put it against the wall. It doesn't matter. But like Mike's Klipsch that you see there, those are one of the best selling iconic speakers in the world. And they're totally enclosed. So they call them acoustic suspension. So his doesn't have any holes at all in it. So he could place his anywhere he wants, close to the wall.
Suspension sounds like a lot of work, but if you can do it, I guess. Yeah. God bless you. God bless you. All right, guys, listen, you've heard a lot of information from Scott and Mike. I've learned a ton. It will be in the show notes and on my website, which is william-mcpherson.com. And gang, you've been listening to Rock Bottom, building your health and happiness from the ground up. So thanks for listening. Bye-bye, everybody. See you, Mike. Thanks, Mike Scott.